Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez. In this episode 446, I am joined, as always, by my co-host, President at _Presidente on Twitter, and just Presidente on Blue Sky. Prez, how you doing?
I'm good. Catch me on Blue Sky during games, y'all, and then a little bit between games. And then the rest of the time for now, I'll be on Twitter. We'll see if over time everything moves to Blue Sky. I still haven't decided.
We'll see. I am also on Blue Sky if you want to follow me there. And mostly just on there now. I don't want to deal with the right-wing zeitgeist happening over on Twitter. All right, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Knicks, who are on a nice little 4-game winning streak. The games, aside from a weird one in Charlotte last Friday, have not been competitive, which has been great. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about a lot more. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, we that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at Strickland on Instagram. Posting all kinds of new content out there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'll be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merch, which you can find on our website, like this sweatshirt. There's plenty of cool stuff on there, like the sweatshirt, and t-shirts, and coffee mugs, and water bottles, and you name it, and we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast and host every Friday. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast, hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave with the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Murdo, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strictly NFL, which is hosted by Constantine Metricos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours. Truly, one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props, head to BetOnline today to get in the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. The Knicks capped off a nice week of wins. I guess haven't capped it off. They have a game on Saturday as well against the Pistons, but they capped off this week's of wins with a fairly dominant 125-101 victory over the Charlotte Hornets, a game in which the Knicks did not really play serious basketball for the first half. And then they tried in the third quarter, and that pretty much was the end of the game. They absolutely kicked the shit out of the Hornets in the third quarter. On both ends of the floor, OG Anunoby in particular had a dominant third quarter. Karl Anthony Towns had another monster game, 27 and 16 points. Jalen Brunson had 24. He left the game with some type of lower back issue, but it seems like he was fine. Tibbs said after the game he could have gone back in. Obviously, they didn't need him to go back in because the game was over. But yeah, good win. I thought Mikal Bridges showed some signs showed positive signs again. He's had a nice, pretty decent stretch here now, ever since whatever the hell happened in Charlotte last Friday. And yeah, look, I think you're seeing a lot of good stuff. Campaign did not play yesterday. Doesn't seem to be anything that they're worried about as a lingering issue. Precious Achiuwa came back, which was nice to see. He immediately supplanted Jericho Sims in the rotation, which was aided by Jericho Sims effectively pissing and shitting himself for 3 minutes when he came in the first quarter. No idea what that was about, but thoughts and prayers with him at this time because that was spectacularly awful. But yeah, all around just solid win, and again caps off a nice week of wins. You know, they absolutely destroyed Orlando. on Tuesday, which was arguably their best win to date this season. I still think the win in Denver is probably the best one, but the Orlando one was dominant in a very specific way from start to finish. That I think the Orlando game was the Denver game was a little bit different. But yeah, I mean they have. I don't want to say they've turned a corner, but I think they have found way more consistency in their play. It is not as streaky. Their defense seems to be ticking up, even though Josh Hart had arguably one of his worst defensive halves all season yesterday in the first half. I don't know what the hell was going on with him. I didn't even think he was that good in the third quarter either. I just thought he was a little
I'll
less.
tell you what was. I'll tell you
Space
what was
Committee.
going on. The Knicks. One thing we've discovered during this stretch is something about this Knicks team's personality is they're a bit of a light switch team. They now that Cardio, I'm still gonna call him Cardio because ever since I started calling him Cardio, he started getting his shit together. Ever since Cardio started shooting better from three, we've seen what this Knicks offense, which was already like best in the league or second best in the league a couple of games ago.
I mean, it's historically
it's reached
good.
yet another level because now now you're talking like the offense that was already elite now has this guy Cardio shooting well from three and Josh Hart shooting well from three. So it's like truly a buzzsaw, and they know that, especially versus bad teams. So you can tell they're just like, this is the metaphor that came into my brain, like watching the Knicks play defense. They just won't try some of the times. Like Josh Hart will just straight up not try, or ignore players. And the other players on the team, they won't not try like Josh Hart, but what they'll do is they'll give like what I call like a B- effort. It's like when I used to study and I was like, I know if I study this much, I'll be able to be average. And for certain classes, that's all I was asking for. I know that if I tried harder, I could get an A, but I don't want to try harder because I don't need to try harder. And that's how the Knicks treat defense a lot of the time. Like they're like, we know we can put 70 on their heads in a half, so we don't really need to lock in all the way on defense, unless they do, right? Like yesterday, they scored a lot on offense in the first half, but the game was still closer than it needed to be. So they were like, all right, we're gonna flip the switch for a little. And in the third quarter, the team clearly tried harder on defense and just put the game away. They know they don't have to do that for a whole game, nor do they want to do that for a whole game. There's a few guys who are gonna put like their top defensive effort all the time, right? Like Deuce, Campaign, Precious, Sims, even though like you just hope he knows what he's doing, but like generally the effort is there. OG. So like those guys will do it all the time, but like Brunson, Cat, McCall, Hart, they have a cruise control setting that they're comfortable on, especially versus bad teams. And it's one of those things where like obviously, we would prefer that they just did the defensive things they're supposed to do all the time. And I'm sure Tibbs understands that, and I'm sure he fucking lit into them at halftime about all that stuff. But like with this level of offense, it's almost inevitable. Like this isn't a bunch of guys who are like, defense is where I hang. This isn't Derek White and Drew Holiday where it's like they're gonna lock in 100% of the time because that's all they've known for 25, 30 years of playing ball. So like it's different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think, to be honest, I don't even think anybody else played that bad on defense other than Josh Hart in the first half. Like I don't know what I don't even think it was a low effort thing from him yesterday. Like there was like one where he didn't box out Josh Green. That's like a low effort play. But
there was a couple of plays where he was just like floating and like he literally like
I don't
didn't give a
think
shit
that's
about, like where he was supposed to be.
I don't agree. I think he's floating, but I don't think he's floating because he's not trying. I think he's floating because that's his bad habit. His bad habit is floating down and trying to maybe cheat on a steal or crash down because if he gets in that position and a shot goes up, he knows he can get the rebound. He's leaving a shooter. That's just a bad habit he has. Like that's his when he has bad defensive games, that's always part of it. When he has good defensive games, that's not part of it. Like I don't think that's an effort thing. I think it's like a mental focus thing.
That's fair. That's fair. I
Yeah.
guess to me, like the line is blurred, and it's definitely a question of like, is he locked in or is he's not locked in terms of knowing where to go.
Well, it was the reason why I don't think it was low for and why I think it was more about just focus, which I guess you can say those are kind of the same thing. I think they're different, but like he would like close out to shooters, which is like that's a good thing. But then I'm like, why are you just jumping in the air? Like he did the thing that like he kept doing in the playoffs last year, where clearly you were not like Josh Hart's not giving us.
See, there was a couple of plays in the first half.
Yes.
Too much effort. Stop jumping 10 feet in the air.
Yeah, like it was
crazy. You were a little choppy. My response was delayed.
Oh, yeah, no, he just kept like jumping in the air yesterday, and I didn't quite understand what was going on with that. And like honestly, I think if you watch
I'll tell you what was going on. I'll tell you what was going on with that. Like in the beginning, he was not closing out on shooters. Like he was floating off of them and just ignoring. And there was one, I forget who he left open. It was not a bad shooter, and they hit a three. And you can tell like he knew Tibbs was yelling at him because he was like, fuck. And he clapped his hands. It was like, my bad. And it's Josh Hart. So what happens is when he realizes eventually, all right, time to lock in my focus, then it's like, when I close out, I'm going to go 90 miles an hour and jump 10 feet in the air.
Yeah. I mean, and he was doing it in the second half too. So like it was just a bad, and those are the two things he always does when he has bad defensive games is like closing out to shooters in the stupidest ways possible, overreacting to pump fakes, like, just getting in trouble like that. And then, we already talked about the off ball thing. Those are like the hallmarks of bad Josh Hart defensive games. And I don't want to focus too much on what was bad because whatever, like it's not that big of a deal. They're allowed, he's allowed to have a bad defensive game and they're allowed to not be perfect and win by 25 points, right? Like that's like why you assemble a good team is so you have a greater margin for error, and they obviously had a huge margin for error. It also helps look like Josh Hart, he hit 4 of 6 from 3 yesterday. He's also shooting 40% now from 3, I believe, for the season. Which, do I think that's sustainable? Probably not. Do I care right now? Not really, because I also don't think Mikal Bridges shooting whatever the fuck he's shooting from 3 right now is something that'll last long term either. So I think those things even out, and you're still net positive, or you're right where you were on aggregate in terms of 3-point shooting. So, yeah, look, he's playing really, really great offensive ball. Pretty much, I don't even think it's a debate. Easily the best offensive ball of his career. But yeah, I just thought the defense yesterday from him was pretty bad, and in a way that I think it felt like he had breakdowns that made everybody else's job harder for that first half and made everybody else's effort and execution look bad. But I really thought like most of the issues were just stupid Josh Hart things. And I guess like the positive takeaway from that is, amidst some of his dumbness on defense, I thought Mikal Bridges actually had a good defensive game. I thought he was fighting over screens pretty effectively. Were there times Micic got the best of him? Sure. But like, it's also hard to know how much of that was he didn't sit until the final 2 minutes of the fucking game. So like, there's probably some fatigue baked into that. It's unrealistic to expect anybody playing that many straight minutes to just be perfect on defense the entire time. But I thought he played with a lot. He's played in general, I would say, the last few games with way more physicality at the point of attack. I even thought this going back to
free throws.
The free throws he made 2 yesterday. He made a pair when he got to his final trip to the line. That was nice. He did get 5 total free throws yesterday, so congrats to him. I thought he's been playing with more physicality going back to like the Denver game last week. I know the Charlotte game was bad, and I know people really got on him for that, and I did too. But like, I didn't really understand the stuff about the defense because I was like, I didn't think his defense was bad in that game. I really didn't. I thought it was fine. Like, same deal. I know there were a couple of ways where Micic, is able to kind of get into the paint, or Brandon Miller is able to get into the paint and convert. But like, I don't really think those are. I didn't view that as, oh man, this is like him just not willing to kind of fight or put his body on the line in any way, shape, or form. He just had a terrible. I mean, he had probably the worst offensive game of the season for him, anyway. Just awful in all kinds of ways. I mean, that turnover before halftime, which Clyde referenced yesterday on the broadcast, was unbelievably stupid and bad. But yeah, like I think his defense has slowly ticked up here, and yesterday was, I don't know if it was the best, but it was another solid defensive performance on his part. And then offensively, I still think he's a little helter-skelter. Like, it's better now just because he's helter-skelter in a way where he's being aggressive, which you want. But, like, there's still a little bit of too much kind of, like, aggression is good. I don't think aggression always needs to manifest in, as soon as I get the ball into my, like, spots where I like taking fadeaways, I have to take a fadeaway. There are times to pass the ball. There was actually one where he took a fadeaway. I don't remember if he got fouled or what exactly happened, but OG was wide open at the elbow behind the arc and kind of like above the break, right where the curve ends, right? And you could see after the play, OG was like kind of like looking at him with his hands up, and Mikal was like, "Yo, my bad. Like I missed you, right?" And you know, those are the kind of, obviously it's fine because he can make those shots, but it's like if you can convert some of those shots into kicking it out to your teammates for open threes, that's obviously better. He did have a really good passing game yesterday, had 7 assists. Some of his dimes were fantastic too. He had a couple of really nice ones to Hart. He had one to OG that was cutting baseline. That was awesome when he got into the paint. So those are really good signs, but shot selection is, I guess, what I would say. Like, there are good shots, like, and I'm happy for him to be more aggressive hunting for shots. Just got to clean up which, like, he took a couple wild ones at the end of the fourth quarter yesterday, which, whatever, I think he was just kind of like, fuck this, I'm just going to let it rip. But some of his 3-point shot selection in general, I would say, has been odd, which has also exacerbated the fact that he's not still, like, shooting with absolute confidence from back there, both, like, from a decision-making perspective and a mechanical perspective. But just in general, way better stuff to see. That play between him and Hart, where Hart jumped in the air and threw a fucking, like, 95-mile-per-hour fastball at him, and he had a lefty dunk on the fast break, was awesome. But yeah, good Mikal Bridges game. Good Mikal Bridges week. To be honest, I thought he played really well against Orlando as well, and then obviously he had the big game against the Pelicans on Sunday, where he went for 31 points.